Hey everybody, welcome back. I got some questions from a viewer in the YouTube comment section about how do you tell if there's an astral imposter, and so that's what this video is about. So when you enter the astral, especially in lucid or semi-lucid awareness, one of the first things you begin to realize is that appearance is not truth. What you see is not always what is there. Okay? Forms can be projected, identities can be mimicked, and in many cases, what you are interacting with is filtered through your own perception while being influenced by something external. This is what people experience as overlays. Okay? When you pierce the overlay, you're able to see the true intentions and the true being behind the mask. Okay? That's what piercing the overlay means. It means like a surface identity is placed over something else. And if you don't question it, you accept it. That is how often deception works in that space. Okay? Through assumption. So piercing the overlay is not about becoming aggressive or fearful. It's about becoming precise in your own awareness. You're learning to read what is underneath the presentation. And there are four main things I do to protect myself from these astral imposters and pierce the overlay. The first thing I always do when I enter the astral is I shield myself, okay? I shield myself with invisibility and a golden orb of protection. This automatically puts a barrier between you and whomever you're interacting with. So first and foremost, stabilize yourself and shield yourself. So before you begin analyzing anything, you need to anchor in your own awareness. If you're reactive, emotional, or overly excited, your perception becomes unstable. You start filling in the gaps, projecting meaning, or accepting things too quickly. So pause, okay? Feel yourself. Know that you are there consciously, not just drifting through a dream. Because once you're stable, you begin to observe clearly. Now, the eyes. The eyes are the most direct way to read conscious presence. When you look into an entity's eyes in the astral, you're not just looking at a feature. You're looking at the level of awareness behind the form. And this is where overlays begin to struggle. Okay? So what you need to do is lock in your gaze. Don't glance away. Don't look away. Just hold your gaze, stay present, and let the moment stretch. If the being is genuine, conscious, and stable, the eyes will reflect that. They'll appear bright, clear, sometimes vividly colored in a way that feels alive. Not exaggerated and not artificial, but present. There'll be depth. It will feel like something is actually there looking back at you, not performing and not mimicking, but just aware. Okay? Bright or strongly colored eyes are often a sign of a benevolent or conscious entity. Or at least at the very least, something that's not fragmented or struggling to maintain its form. There's coherence there, and you'll feel that as a kind of calm intensity. Not threatening and not chaotic. But if something feels off, the eyes will reveal that. They may appear dull, flat, overly dark in a way that feels empty, or inconsistent in brightness. Sometimes they shift subtly, and sometimes they don't quite align with the expression being presented. And the longer you hold the eye contact, the harder it becomes for an imposter to maintain that stability. You might feel resistance or pressure, and you might feel an urge to look away. That's not random. That's the overlay being strained. Do not look away. Because that moment, when the eyes begin to break, that is when you are starting to see what is actually there. Okay? The next thing to to look at and to observe is the lips. This is where you begin to read intention before expression. Okay? Most people overlook this completely. They listen to what is being said, but they don't observe how it's being formed. In the astral, communication is often telepathic, but imposters will still simulate speech and expression to maintain realism. And the lips, because they sit at the edge of that expression, reveal what is about to be projected. So instead of focusing only on the message, watch the lips. Study them. If the lips appear healthy, stable, or even slightly luminous or opaque, that usually reflects coherent and non-hostile intention. Okay? The form is holding naturally. The expressions matches the energy behind it. There's no strain or fragmentation. But when the lips appear chapped, dry, cracked, or unstable in texture, that can indicate distorted or negative intention. Not necessarily exaggerated evil, but definitely misalignment or manipulation. You know, something that is not fully clean in its intent. Okay? Think of it like this. The more distortion there is in intention, the harder it is for the form to maintain consistently at that point of expression. And the lips are exactly where that shows. You may notice also subtle mismatches. The being is saying something calm, but the lips carry tension. The tone is friendly, but there's a slight tightening, a micro expression that flashes or disappears. Maybe a smirk that doesn't belong, or a delay between intent and movement. These are cracks in the overlay. They're small, but real. And if you catch them, you know you're not just looking at what is being presented, you're seeing through it. Now you combine both, okay? This is where the discernment becomes real. You look into the eyes to read the presence and awareness. You observe the lips to read intention and expression. And when both align, bright, stable eyes, and healthy, coherent lips, you're most likely dealing with something that is not attempting to deceive you. But when there is a mismatch, that's your signal. Bright eyes but distorted lips, a calm message but stable expression, or a stable face but an empty gaze. That is where you pause and you stop taking things at face value. Now the third method is interaction, specifically using your breath, blowing on them, blowing on the entity. It may sound simple, but what you're doing is actually very direct. In the astral, breath is not just a physical action. It is intent carried through motion. It's your presence being projected outward in a focused way. So when you blow toward or on an entity, you are pushing your field into theirs, okay? And you're testing their stability. If the being is genuine, coherent, and stable, nothing significant happens. They remain. Their form holds. They may react slightly, like anybody would, but they do not destabilize. They don't flicker or withdraw, but if it's an imposter, especially one relying on an overlay, that push will disrupt them. Oftentimes, they will just disappear or run away. They know that they've been caught. You might see them blur, flicker, or step back suddenly. As soon as you blow on them, you're no longer just observing. You're asserting your presence, okay? And imposters rely on passive acceptance. They rely on you not questioning, not testing, and not pushing back. The moment you do, they lose control of the interaction. Now, here's one thing that you got to understand clearly. It's not about attacking everything that you encounter. This is about precision and clarity. These are real beings, real presences, okay? Even aspects of your own consciousness that can appear in form. And you don't want to approach everything with suspicion or hostility. In the beginning, you may. But eventually you don't. What you are developing, though, is the ability to differentiate, to feel the difference between something that is coherent and something that is constructed. And that takes practice. At first, you will consciously check the eyes, then the lips, then test it with your breath. But over time, this becomes immediate. You'll feel it before you even analyze it. Something feels right or it doesn't. And when you reach that point, the overlays lose their effectiveness completely and will even stop coming to you or bothering you. Okay? Because you're no longer relying on what is being shown to you. You're reading what is actually there. So the next time you find yourself in the astral and something feels even slightly off, don't ignore it. Pause. Stabilize yourself. Shield yourself. Look directly into the eyes and hold your gaze. Study the lips. And if you need confirmation, project your presence outward, even through something as simple as your breath. Okay? And then see what holds. Because anything real will remain stable under observation, and anything pretending will eventually fail to maintain the mask. And once you see that, once you truly see that, you're no longer easy to be deceived. Okay? So I hope this is for, the more advanced lucid dreamers and astral projectors that are encountering beings in the astral. So I hope this helps you guys. Let me know what you think in the comments below.
So here's how I know what I know about false light. Here's the reason why I can see and discern and know what is false light. I can go to a psychic fair and I can walk around and I can see what the imposters are. And many of these psychics are gifted psychics. Like they're very good at what they're tuned in spiritually, but they're not tuned into the channel that I happen to be tuned into. And everybody has different gifts. So here's the origin. I spent about 20 years as what I call a feel-good spiritual teacher. I was doing all the fun and uplifting stuff, which, by the way, our world needs. We need the wonderful, uplifting Reiki circles and drum circles and all of the happy empowerment. We need all of that in this difficult matrix that we're existing in. But I also was I did recognize that there were dark forces, but I didn't want to have anything to do with it. I was like, no, if you told me that I was going to work in the field of psychic protection 20 years ago, or actually 10 years ago, I would have said you were crazy. And then right at about 10 years ago, 2016, I had an experience that changed my life. Now, when I was younger, I did have some spiritual warfare encounters, demonic things that happened when I was younger. But in 2016, there was something so significant that happened that it literally opened my eyes. I realized that a lot of the things that I believed, like the New Age ideas that if you just focus on positive, no negative energy can touch you. I believed all of that, and all of my belief systems came crumbling down because here's what happened. I went to a colleague who is a spiritual guide, a spiritual healer, for a second opinion. I felt like there was some psychic attack coming my way from someone in our spiritual community who was a sexual predator working in the spiritual community. And I felt like he was mildly psychically attacking me. I was noticing some symptoms and I wanted to get her opinion because she supposedly specialized in helping people with spiritual warfare. And that's where the real mind F happens because things got really weird. So I went to her for this appointment thinking I was going to get a second opinion. Lovely person, by the way. This is not someone who seems evil. I don't believe she is evil. Right after the appointment, I went through 6 weeks of hell. So beginning right after that appointment, I started having all of this like major uptick in paranormal activity. The lights were flashing in my house. I was literally like, I was already clairvoyant and psychic. I already had those abilities, but I wasn't, not to the level that I was suddenly experiencing. I was seeing demons all the time in my house. I was seeing multiple other types of entities. I would open my eyes in the morning, wake up, the room was full of all these entities, and I was like, what is happening? I started having bends in reality, missing time. The birds in my yard were acting really weird. My 2 cats that I had at the time were afraid to come into the house. I couldn't find them one day, and I was looking around, and then I opened the door where the cat door was. It was the cat door was in an actual door. Opened the door and looked down, and there they were, and they were like, "Mom, we're afraid to come in the house because there was something in there." Um, Fast forward, long, very, very long story short. One day, I finally realized that all of this was coming from her. She actually, her story was that she believed that she was working with 12 seraphim angels. She believed that she was chosen, and that she was supposed to be helping humanity in this whatever certain way that she believed. And so this whole time that I was being attacked, I had been reaching out to her for help. Like, help me. I don't know what's happening, because I'm thinking I can obtain assistance from her. And then, but she kept going MIA. Like she wouldn't respond to my messages. I couldn't reach her, and I was desperate. And then one day I was so stressed about all these entities and this paranormal attack that was happening. And I was thinking, am I never going to get rid of this? I'm going to have to shut down my spiritual work. I can't work with people spiritually if I have all this going on. Majorly stressed out. So I got down on the floor and did yoga for like 30 minutes just to calm myself down. And when you're in a meditative state, it tends to make you, and you're calmer, you can see the answers more clearly. So once I got up from doing that calming practice, I was putting the yoga mat away, and I happened to look down at the book, her book that she had written that I had purchased from her, and I had been reading it. I looked down and I saw the book in a whole new way. The cover of the book had angel wings and all these cloud formations. And when I looked down at the book, I saw there were like 1,000 demon faces in the clouds. And I went, oh my God, whatever this is happening to me is coming from her. And then I had 2 helpful people around that time, a past mentor that I used to work with, and then some people at the local metaphysical shop. Through both of those avenues, I was able to obtain clarity that what was happening was an encounter with a jinn. When they first suggested it to me at the beginning of the attack, so 6 weeks, at the beginning of this 6-week attack, I said, oh, no, it's not that. And the reason why I said that was because I had never heard of jinn and I didn't believe in them. But here's the thing. You can not believe in an entity, but it can believe in you if it exists, So it turned out that actually was what it was. It was a jinn. And what I talk about in my newest book, Revealing the False Light Agenda, is that there are a handful of different types of entities. Jinn are the ones that I've had the most encounters with, who are shapeshifters. So there's a handful of different entities that are masterful at shape-shifting. Jinn are the most masterful. And one example of this is that one jinn can shapeshift into 12 angels, which is why this healer believed that she had 12 seraphim angels. It was this jinn. And this is why I was seeing multiple demons, multiple other kinds of entities in my home. I didn't have any demons in my home. It was the jinn that was terrorizing me. But here's the thing, even though, actually, I'm going to circle back around to this. So this was validated by the fact that once I suspected, but I had trouble believing it even then. Like, I can't believe it because this healer, she's so nice and I really like her. And I can't believe that this would be coming from her. And I was talking to my friend and I kept saying on the phone, but I can't believe it. I just can't believe that this would be coming from her. I sent a text later that night to I call the healer with the 12 seraphim angels, just for shorthand, I call her the angel lady. So I there was a student of the angel lady that I was acquaintances with. And I sent that student a text because I was concerned about her because she was also under what she thought was demonic attack. And I thought, I wonder if the same thing is happening to her. So I sent her kind of a vague text and I said, please be careful and really discerning with any spiritual teachers that you're working with. And she texted back and she said, I'll keep that in mind, but I think this would be better in a conversation. And I said, I agree, but we'll have to do that later. Like, I needed to clean up what I was dealing with. That night, the middle of the night, I was in a deep sleep. I was lying on my back and something woke me up. My eyes flew open and there was the entity in its true form. So here's the validation. I've had multiple validations, but this was the first big validation. Jinn in their true form are plasma beings, which means it's like electricity. It's like a blob of electricity, of energy. And then from that original form, they can shapeshift into whatever they want. So I was seeing it in its true form. It was hovering above me. And then even though it was kind of an amorphous plasma energy, it appeared to extend almost like it was like creating arms, because part of each side like reached forward inside my shoulders. So it reached into my physical body and then yanked really hard. And I knew in that moment it was trying to pull my soul out of my body. And I can't even describe what that yanking feeling felt like. It was very intense, but for some reason it was not able to succeed. And I joke now, it's easy to joke in hindsight. I joke now that it's because I'm too stubborn and the entity couldn't pull my soul out. But that moment of my life was the most terrifying of my entire life. And I've had multiple entity encounters since then, but part of the terror, not just that I was being literally attacked and this thing I think was going to try to possess me. So that was terrifying. But the other terrifying part was that I didn't fully understand what was happening. Even then, it was hard to believe that this is a jinn, this was a shapeshifter, because I'm always a skeptic. Like, I'm a skeptic of even things that are happening to me real time. So I'm like, what is happening? I don't understand. Was that an angel? No, I don't think that was an angel. That was this jinn. And I'd like to say that I was brave and I yelled at it or I did something brave, But at that time, I was not as brave. I developed more bravery later on, but I was so terrified that I started hyperventilating. I rolled over onto my side with my arms over my head, and I stayed in that position crying and hyperventilating. I think it was for a couple of hours until the sun came up. While I was in that state, there was nothing else that indicated that the jinn was still there. Oh, I forgot to mention that when I was on my back and it tried to pull my soul out, it did speak to me. And it was telepathic. I heard a booming male voice inside my skull. This was not some like, oh, I think I had a thought in my mind, you know. No, this was undeniable. Booming male voice inside my skull. And it said, don't mess with her. She's mine. Now, to this day, I don't know if the her that he was referring to was the angel lady or the student of the angel lady. I don't know, but that's what he said. So fast forward, I did obviously survive that attack. I was able to eventually clear that entity. But, you know, I was reaching out to different people in my community, like all the elder spiritual teachers in the community. And they were saying very unhelpful things like, have you tried burning sage? Or just focus on the positive. If you focus on positive energy, nothing negative can touch you. Or this isn't real, it's just a reflection of your unhealed inner shadow. And all this other nonsense. And I was getting very upset. I was getting doubly traumatized because I was being gaslit, you know.
I sort of stop you there quickly, Maya.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I just want to say something quickly here.
Of course.
When people say that, I think positive, think light. Yes, it's we do. But the problem with that, it's like a magnet. It draws the darkness to you a lot quicker and a lot more. So
yes,
you know, to say just think positive. Yes, you can think positive, but it becomes worse. It actually the stuff that happens just gets worse and worse and worse because it's trying to wear you down. It's just like a magnet. The more you push, the more it pushes against you. So you're right.
Yes. Yes. I'm glad you brought that up because actually what I've discovered in working with clients over the years, and I'm both creative and analytical. I'm intuitive and analytical. And so I notice patterns. And the pattern that I was noticing over and over and over again is this, this reality that, yes, positive energy is a good thing, but opposite energies attract. And so I was getting all of these students and clients who also believed that if they just didn't focus on dark force, if they didn't focus on anything dark, they only focused on the light, they only focused on love, then they would never have any negative spiritual encounters. And they were so confused, like, why is all of this dark stuff? Like, why are they being targeted by dark forces? Because that's not what New Age is teaching, and what I was discovering through noticing patterns was that these opposite energies attract, and people who are very light polarized tend to be magnets for dark forces. Even though we don't want to believe that, it's an unpleasant thought, but it is actually the reality that I've seen.
No, 100%
so
agree with that.
Yeah, so that's the origin story. And then I will just also add that about 2 years later, when I was preparing to write my first book, so about 2 years after that major jinn attack, I was preparing to write my first book, Darkness Disguised as Light, which my intention there was to share all of the details of that whole story because I left out a lot. It was like a Dan Brown novel. I mean, it was like so crazy, all weird stuff happening. And so I was writing this book, and I remember thinking, even at that time, it was 2 years after that major traumatic, very traumatizing encounter. And I remember feeling like, as these 2 years had passed, and the incident felt more distant, there was a part of my brain that was like, was that even real? Like, did that even really happen? Because again, I'm an open-minded skeptic. I question even my own experiences, and it just seemed too weird to be real. And at that time, 2 years after that attack, I started having different situations that validated what I went through. So what I mean by that is that I had my first client who had a major jinn attachment, and that fully it gave me any more validation that I needed, because this gal showed up at my house for a group class that I was having when I was living in Kansas City. And she said to me, Maya, can our spirit guides lie to us? And I said, well, what do you mean? Like, what are you talking about? And she said, well, my beloved spiritual teacher so-and-so recently passed away. And when she passed away, all of a sudden, this deceased, the person who used to be her spiritual teacher, showed up in spirit form and told her that the former spiritual teacher was going to be her new spirit guide. And she said that this spirit guide, her former spiritual teacher, talks to her all the time, and she hears her in her mind. She hears her voice like audibly. It's not just like thoughts in your head. And she said that this spirit guide will tell her to do things. And she said, the spirit guide has gotten me into trouble. I had to go to jail for a while because I followed what this spirit guide told me to do. And so then I said, okay, well, we need to make an appointment. Let's schedule an appointment because we need to talk about this. So we met over Zoom because she lived an hour away, and we decided it was easier for her that way. And during the appointment on Zoom, I started telling her about jinn and false light entities. And when I started speaking to her about that, all of a sudden she couldn't hear me. So at the beginning of the call, we were just chatting, how's your day going? She could hear me fine. Whenever I started talking about, here's what's happening, this is an imposter, blah, 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 all of a sudden my voice was muffled and she couldn't hear me. And I said, okay, well, from my experience, I knew that jinn tend to interfere with electronics. That's something that they're very skilled with. And so I said, okay, let's get off Zoom and let's just have a typed conversation on Facebook Messenger. So we got on Facebook Messenger, and that's when things got really weird. All of a sudden, so my hands are on the keyboard, all of a sudden I hear the entity's voice. Again, it's a booming voice in my skull. Undeniable. This is not some, I had some thoughts and I'm just saying that it was clairaudience. No, this was a loud voice, and it was male. So she thought her spirit guide was a woman. Okay. The true entity was male oriented, because this was a male voice booming in my head, and it said, tell her that she can trust me. And I'm like, I don't think so. And so I said, who are you? To the entity, who are you? And it said, now I'm going to muffle my voice on purpose for part of it, because that's what he did. It said, I am Uhifer. And I said, what? And it said, I am Uhifer. And I said, Christopher? And then I went, oh no. It's not Christopher. It's Lucifer. Okay. But here's the thing. I knew this is not Lucifer. This is a jinn. Jinn loved to play tricks. I knew in my very being, because this entity felt it was not the same entity, but it felt exactly the same, like signature. It was exactly the same entity. I knew 1,000% this is not Lucifer. He's trying to scare me. That a-hole, he's trying to scare me. So I'm typing and I'm trying to tell her, okay, the entity that you're dealing with, this is an imposter, and this is not your beloved teacher. You're being tricked. And I wish that story had turned out in a positive way. The only positive of that story was that it gave very solid validation. That part of my brain that couldn't fully 100, like I could 99% believe what had happened to me 2 years prior, but there was that 1% that was like, this can't be real. When I had that situation with that client, that sealed it for me. Like I knew I know what I experienced, and I know what happened with this client. Unfortunately, it was not a positive outcome for her. The entity, the jinn, was talking to her like 24/7. It was giving her messages, and unfortunately, she kept listening to it. So I kept telling her, you have to stop listening to it. You have to, because it's gaining more power the more that it's digging into your consciousness, and you have to stop giving it food. Basically, you have to stop giving it energy. And I was very much wanting to help her get clear of it. But there was this, like, I've seen this with a couple of other people as well. It's like this mental attachment that she had to the entity. And she would message me late at night, certain nights, and she would say, the entity is telling me this and that, and I've been asking it questions and it's still giving me wrong answers. And I'm like, quit asking it for advice. Like, you have to, this is a negative entity. But she just couldn't disconnect from it. Eventually, she said that she wanted to stop working with me, which is totally her right to do so. She said that her family told her that she needed to return to Christianity and that would save her. Interestingly enough, a few weeks before she had that conversation with me, I had attended a Christian church as a guest with a student of mine. And we're sitting there in the church listening to, it was not a service, but it was a speaker. We were listening to a speaker talk about a subject. And so I'm listening to the speaker at the podium, and all of a sudden something hits me on the side of my head right here. And it hit me so hard and so suddenly and unexpectedly that there in that quiet church where there's only the speaker speaking at the podium, it happened so unexpectedly that I said really loud, "Ow!" And everybody looked at me, and I grabbed my head just out of, out of instinct. I grabbed my head, and I then looked up because I was like, I want to see, like, what just hit me? Like, it felt like a stone had been thrown at my head. I looked up. Now, by this point, I think that because of that trauma that I experienced in 2016, that attack, I think that's what opened me up to be able to see false light entities, because no one else saw what I saw, but I saw it, and I know what I saw. And it was like, and it wasn't something that I was looking for. I looked up. It wasn't something that I was expecting, is what I mean. Wasn't expecting it. I looked up and I saw a huge jinn So it was just like the thing that had hovered above me. It wasn't the same entity though, but it had that like electrical energy plasma look to it, but it was huge. It was so big that it was hovering over the entire congregation. And through claircognizance, psychic knowing, as I looked up, I just immediately knew that this entity was pretending to be God. And that blew my mind because I'd been raised Catholic, even though I was no longer Catholic. And there was still some remnants of those beliefs within me. And it was like this idea was, how could a negative being pose as God? Like, why would God allow that? So I had this like existential crisis right there. Like, what is happening? I would have expected negative entities would pose as spirit guides and deceased loved ones, but God, like, my mind was blown. So but I didn't feel that I was in any danger. I just sat there and was like, oh my God, I can't believe what I'm seeing here. And then it was a couple weeks later that my client said that she was going to return to Christianity and she believed that that would save her. And I already knew from the experience a couple weeks ago that there is no religion that is a safe zone from dark forces. Like, it has infiltrated everywhere. But of course, she has free will. She can do whatever she needs to. I told her, I told her my opinion, and then that I support whatever she decides to do. So I don't know whatever happened to her. But that experience was further validation. And then in the past 10 years, I've had multiple encounters with not only jinn, but other entities that are shapeshifters. Demons also like to shapeshift. There are some human ghosts. I had an encounter with, again, this was a jinn, but false light entities can be other demons and ghosts and etc. This was another jinn encounter. I went to a new age shop. Innocently, I'm like just trying to make connections at this new town where I've moved to. Go into the new age shop, and long story short, there's an entity in the back area. I go into the back area where I think they were having classes and stuff. It was there was no class happening, but there was some artwork for sale on the walls. So it was separate from the main part of the shop. So I'm walking back there. I hear this high-pitched frequency in my ear, and I feel this weird, like, eerie feeling. And there was this white mist kind of appearance in the room. And I said to myself, I kind of laughed because I didn't realize what trouble I was in for. I kind of laughed and I said, they're obviously doing a lot of weird channeling events at this shop because there's something weird hanging out here. And so then I finished my shopping. I went to my car, and as I was approaching my car, I realized just through claircognizance that the entity was following me to my car. So I didn't see it. I just knew, I think it's trying to follow me home. And so I set energetic boundaries, and I sat in my car and I said, this entity is not allowed to follow me home, blah, 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 blah. I did this like proclamation. The thing that I discovered over the years about jinn in particular is that they are much harder to deal with than demons. Demons are easy. Okay, that might sound crazy, but demons will respond to your authority. If you stand in your authority and say, I command you to leave, or I command you to leave in the name of Jesus Christ, or however you want to do the command, they will leave. They respond to boundaries. But if you stand in your authority with a jinn, the result will be very bad and could even be deadly because they're pure psychopaths. Okay. This is what I discovered the hard way in this encounter. So it did follow me home. And then I went to bed that night. As soon as I closed my eyes, I laid back on the pillow, I closed my eyes. As soon as I closed my eyes, I became aware. So this was with my eyes closed. I want to clarify that. I was awake, but it was more of a clear knowing and in my mind's eye, as opposed to a pure clairvoyant seeing an entity in the room. I closed my eyes, immediately became aware that my bed was surrounded by what looked like the pantheon of ancient Greek gods and goddesses, who I don't typically personally work with myself, but all of a sudden they were there. And I went, oh, I don't think that's what I'm actually seeing. Like, I don't think that's actually what is there. And I said, okay. And then like as a collective, they said to me, we are here to protect you from the entity you encountered at the New Age store. And I said, I don't think so. I don't think that's the case. And so then I said, well, I'm going to sleep. So I went to sleep, and in the middle of the night, in my sleep, I would be partially woken up because I was hearing this loud voice. In this case, it was a loud voice in the room, not inside my skull. And the loud voice said, we are the Council of Orion. So an alien council. We are the Council of Orion. We understand you are seeking truth about your reality, and we are here to give you the answers. You can help all of humanity by channeling these messages for us. You can be a conduit for our messages. And even in my half asleep state, I thought, wow, I can totally understand how these tricky jinn get through to so many very heart-centered, genuine spiritual teachers, spiritual seekers who are so genuine and heart-centered that they do want to help humanity. And they hear a message like that and they think, well, of course I want to help humanity. I'll volunteer to channel these messages. And I thought, even in my half awake state, I thought, wow, I get it now. Like, I really get how convincing these entities can be. And I said, I don't believe you. You're not the Council of Orion. I went back to sleep. And then it kept going and it said, you can trust us. We really are who we say we are. And I said, no, you're not. And this went on for hours. And so here I am, I'm trying to sleep. Well, I wake up in the morning and then it changes. So I never did see the Council of Orion. It was just a voice. I wake up in the morning and whatever this being, this jinn, it transformed into demons in my room. And I said, okay, so you can't fool me by pretending to be beings of light. So now you're going to try to scare me. And so I, unfortunately, didn't understand how psychopathic jinn are. And so later that day, I did a whole ceremony, a ritual, and a very powerful proclamation demanding that entity leave. And because I know this is a long story, I'm going to skip some parts and I'm just going to fast forward and say that within 2 days, one of my cats was killed. So my cat was dead. And I knew, as I looked back, I knew actually the morning after my cat died, the jinn appeared at my bed as an angel. And it said, I am your beloved cat. And I am really an angel. And I'm going to be your guardian angel now. And I was so furious. And when it did that, I realized that it was the reason why my cat had died so tragically. So that made me realize, number one, that incident made me realize how convincing they are. And number two, I learned the hard lesson that when dealing with jinn, you have to take kind of backdoor methods to clearing them. For example, going in and clearing all core wounds within you, past life issues where you've been a victim, doing all of this work to clear out whatever it is that it's able to hook into within you. And instead of clearing it in a direct way, because that doesn't work, it just doubles down and creates a lot of havoc. So interestingly, this happened right before the COVID lockdown. And as soon as the COVID lockdown happened, all of a sudden the entity left and it never came back. I never did go back into that shop, and I never will, because I don't want to have to re-clear this entity. One thing that I noticed with it was that I don't think it had ever encountered someone that it couldn't fool, because it kept trying and trying and trying. Like, this didn't work. It tried another thing. It tried the next thing. It tried the next thing. And I realized I don't think it had ever encountered somebody that knew what it was until me. And because I think it was confused, like it just kept trying. So shortly after, I was talking with a colleague of mine at the time, and I told her what happened with that jinn encounter and what happened with my cat and how traumatizing it was. And she reached across and she patted my hand and she said, "Oh, don't be such a scaredy cat. I'll go back into that new age shop with you. It won't bother me." And I was like, wow. I didn't say anything, but I thought that is true ignorance. True ignorance. She didn't understand how dangerous these beings can be. And I'm someone who specializes in psychic protection. So over the last 10 years, that is what I have slept, breathed, psychic protection, developing all these methods that do work. But when it comes to jinn, you don't want to purposely walk into an environment where you know there's going to be a jinn. You just don't want to do it. It's 100 times easier to clear demons than it is to clear a jinn. And she was not informed enough, aware enough to really understand that. So, and that's a lot of what I've encountered in the New Age community is like, oh, that's not real. But then if that wasn't real, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to work with hundreds of people over the last 10 years who've had horrible encounters, whether it's with imposter entities, false light entities, or just straight out dark forces. So that's my diatribe. I'm all out of breath because I've just been like on my soapbox. I'm very passionate about this because I have seen people be seriously harmed because they didn't understand that what they were channeling was actually a dark being. And then by the time they would find me, this thing would be so hooked in, or there would be a partial or full possession by that point. And they could have avoided all the major suffering that they were going through if they had only known. So that was why I put out the book, was because I did have a case with somebody last spring where it was a very serious case. The person did become possessed by the jinn, and it was very unfortunate because by that point, it was very difficult to help them. And if they had understood about these things in the beginning, then they wouldn't have had to go through all of that suffering for themselves and their family. These popular entities are 100% false light. In other words, they are not who they say they are. They are tricksters, charlatans, frauds. They are literally dark entities pretending to be beings of light, and they have a ton of people fooled. First on this list is an entity that is very popular in New Age, and that is Saint Germain and the Violet Flame. That entity is not actually a real being. It's literally random false light entities are pretending to be Saint Germain as they hook into various spiritual people who are channeling false messages. Second on the list is Seth of Seth Speaks material by Jane Roberts. That entity was a false light entity, an imposter, not a beneficial entity. Third on the list is the Galactic Federation of Light. It's very popular nowadays for people to channel alien beings from the Galactic Federation, and that is completely fake. It is literally false light entities having a heyday pretending to be members of this Galactic Federation. It is not real, it's false light. My name is Maya Zahira, and if you'd like to learn more about false light and more, you can find information on my website, psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. And I also talk about false light in my book, The Psychic Attack Source Book, on Amazon. Thanks for watching.